Always good. Round two.
Round two. Yeah. So I apologize for that. Number one. I had technical difficulties. I was like 15 minutes into an interview with Josh, and I can't apologize to him enough, but we're doing this again, and it's going to work this time for sure. I can feel it. But regardless, Josh, thank you. I know you're just excited to talk about solar and see if we can help some folks. So brief, give me 20-second intro about you and where you come from and what it is that you're doing now.
SparkNotes, 7 years, coming on 8 years in the solar industry, a majority of it spent in Australia. Everything from door knocking to cold calling to eventually running my own EPCs, it's called in the States. We call it solar retailer in Australia. Before COVID hit, we moved everything virtually. We're selling from a bunch of different continents into the Australian market, then switched over to the US market about a year and a half, 2 years ago, coming on, and haven't looked back. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, I said last time, you're definitely the most international solar person I know, because Vancouver, I think when we spoke last, you were in Mexico, but now you're back in Canada. Is that correct?
So when we first tried to do this, I was in Mexico last week. I just got back to Canada 2 days ago.
All right. So that you're very right there. That's already more countries than I've been in like 2 days. But it's very cool. And I remember when I first spoke with you like a year and a half ago, I remember you were in Asia, but your business was in Australia, and now you're Mr. Worldwide in the solar space. The main thing I've been talking to a lot of people recently, and I think the biggest thing that you can help me to provide value to people is virtual solar sales, because obviously that is, I believe, the focus of your mastermind group, but it's also I think people tend to overcomplicate virtual sales a lot more than they need to. And I think it's probably one of the biggest areas for opportunity for reps out there that maybe don't think they could do it, because I think it's a lot easier than they think. Tell us, have you always been virtual? How did that come about? And how have you really kind of honed in on those skills?
So first off, define virtual, because a lot of people simply define virtual as a Zoom call. When I say virtual, when I respond to it, I mean anything that's done over the internet and not in person. So Zoom, phone, whatever, right?
Yeah, that's how I define virtual as well. I tell people virtual. I've done virtual before where I just do phone calls, and it's just what I mean by that is just you're not in the home. So
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, no, I haven't always done virtual. I was back in the day when we started, closing deals was not virtual, but telesales based, phone based appointment setting became a thing, and I was a big part of bringing sort of the virtual side into the appointment setting. But I was running a big doors team, and at the same time running a call center in office appointment setting. Cold calling, just straight cold calling in Australia, and then setting appointments up for our in-home consultants. That lasted for a while. That was the business model. Have a doors team set appointments and a phones team set appointments for one consultant team in one area at a time. That was the go-to business model for a few years. Then I really started getting into digital. I moved to Africa for a year for certain reasons. And I was taught by this Ugandan guy who was selling car parts on Facebook through Facebook ads back in like 2016 to 2017. And then he taught me the black arts of digital marketing. And back then, nobody knew about it. Like drop shipping it wasn't a thing. It was a thing and people were making money. But a year or two later is when it exploded. And that's when everyone's like, go buy my drop shipping course, because it was sort of dead at that point, right? So he was in it at the time that it was very, very profitable. And then I was looking at solar and I'm like, okay, cool. This is an amazing skill, like being able to advertise to people without actually picking up the phone or knocking their doors. So how do I bring it to solar? So got back to Australia. And I was running a sales or marketing company. Here we would call it a dealer, right? I was running operations for it, and we were national. And I kept going back to the owners, and I kept saying, let's try this. Give me a budget. Give me a budget for Facebook ads. Like, look, I'm selling, T-shirts online to people halfway across the world and making money. Let's try it for solar. And they just kept saying, no, we don't know about it. Just stick to door knocking. Let's just keep building it. So eventually, I started my own thing, right? So my EPC, as it's called, Sun Factory in Australia. And that was just pure digital marketing. And this was 2017, 2018, right? 4 years ago. And at that time, nobody in solar especially was doing digital marketing. So it was very new, and finance companies had no idea about it. And again, this was purely for lead generation. This wasn't closing yet, right? But our lead generation model switched from cold calling and cold knocking to digital marketing, hot leads into a call center, and really skilled guys, and book the guys in for in-home consultations. So we did that for a while. We smashed 2018. We had a good 6-7 months where nobody figured it out, and we were sort of the only people doing it. We got a lot of perks as well from it. Like our finance companies back in Australia, they didn't really understand it. So because we weren't cold knocking and cold calling, they gave us benefits that a lot of people wouldn't get because it was sort of inbound sales. Then team was made of sort of travelers, so we decided, okay, cool, we're gonna put aside the in-home team, and we're gonna see what happens if we just go full virtual. So we scaled things down way small, and we kept on the core group of people, and we all started traveling because we got the travel bug. So I was doing South America. I had one guy doing Europe. Like, we were all over the place, and we're like, let's just, for shits and giggles, see if we can book appointments in and close virtually. And this was like 2018, moving into 2019, and we started doing it, and it worked. It didn't work on any grand scale because we were all traveling and we weren't really taking it super seriously. We were sort of off for a few months, but we're like, oh, let's just keep it alive and see what happens. And then we were closing. We all finished our travels, or it just started working so well. We're like, okay, well, it works. Let's actually do it properly. So then 2019 came around, and at the beginning of 2020, by 2020, the team was in a villa in Bali, purely selling virtually into the Australian market, even well before COVID hit. So it just sort of went naturally, right? It's sort of, what do we want to do? Okay, can we do this virtually? Can we do this digitally? And it just, naturally grew from there. But it's been a fun ride. And now we're 100% virtual. I do have door knocking teams now in the US because it is still really easy. But, my passion is definitely virtual.
Yeah. And obviously, virtual really kind of took off as its own thing when COVID hit. Like, everyone all of a sudden was like, hey, anyone done virtual? And I think at that point is when the pros in the industry that tried it were like, oh, this isn't that hard. And now it's kind of grown to a place where a lot of people are having success at it. And then obviously with the tools that we have too, it just makes it easier, not easier, but it makes it definitely possible. There's nothing holding us back from being able to show them and walk them through the information. What do you think is the greatest challenge of virtual for somebody who maybe is used to doing the doors?
First off, they'll think that it's the same. So they'll think, I'm an amazing closer in home, so I'm just going to jump in, I'm going to smash it. And they don't realize that it's just different, right? So the way I explain it is, if you're in home, right, you have generally 3 different types of communication. You have your body language, you have your tonality, and you have your script, what you actually say. Body language in the animal kingdom is like 50, 60, 70% of everything, right? We can take a look at pretty much every other organism out there outside of humans, and they haven't learned how to write script down. They have their body language and maybe the sound that comes out of their mouth. So in home, you have that massive data pool, right, that you can give off and your customer can give off, and you heavily rely on that, whether you know that or not. When you move virtually, whether you're doing Zoom or not, that body language either completely disappears or drastically decreases. So the tonality, how you say what you say, and the words that you use are expanded out and magnified by 2, 3, 4 times. And so getting used to being able to communicate through tonality as opposed to relying on body language, especially when you didn't know that you were using body language, is a big hurdle. But like, for example, when I moved my in-house guys to our pure virtual model, same thing. They're like, oh yeah, I'll crush it. And for 2 or 3 weeks, they were struggling. But I think it stemmed from them thinking that it was going to be just the same, and they just didn't go in it with a fresh head and say, okay, what's different here? What do I need to do? But that communication channel is just different, right? So you need to learn how to communicate through that, especially if you've never done any phone-based things. If you've done phone-based things as well, there's an easier transition.
Yeah, I think the challenge that a lot of people have is when they go into virtual or phone sales and they reset to being a beginner and they start treating every conversation like it's the same. Meaning they're not noticing the small things. They're not able to really kind of pick up on the differences between one homeowner and the next, because depending who you're talking to on the phone, it's a completely different conversation on how you handle it. So you have to be able to kind of figure that out, hopefully beforehand or in the first like 10 seconds of the call, kind of figure out what kind of person what kind of person you're talking to and what kind of presentation it's going to be. Meaning there's some people that, like, if you can't build rapport with them over the phone, you're never going to be able to get the close. And there's other people that really are just looking directly. They just want to see the numbers and they want to treat it like a business conversation. And you have to make sure that you're kind of maintaining that as well. What is your comfort level when it comes to Zoom? And do you typically, if you had your choice, would you do Zoom or would you stick to doing on the phone?
So phones, I would say phones. Look, if you're going to do Zoom, you might as well do in-home. Just like, it's just different, right? Now I started as an in-home guy, so I have absolutely no problem doing Zoom. But the issues I have with Zoom don't have to do anything with me. They have to do with the customer. So the reason I preach phone solely is because with Zoom, right, there's a few things that you're assuming. First off is that they know how to use Zoom. If they don't know how to use Zoom and they can't figure it out, a lot of people will be too embarrassed to tell you they can't figure out tech, especially older people, and they just no-show, right? Another one is they think Zoom and they think I have to show my face, right? Even if you tell them, hey, you don't need to show your face, to show your screen or listen. Some people don't know Zoom. They think it's just straight, it's a face. So someone's at home and whatever, maybe the wife hasn't done the makeup, whatever, the guy's hair's all over the place. There's that, I don't know if I want to jump on the Zoom. And many times people will just no-show. And then because you're Zooming, what a lot of people do is they'll have a presentation and they'll share their screen and show a presentation. That opens the gates to showing too much information, right? These random graphs and stuff on the screen, which I personally don't like. Even in home, we keep it bare bones. So the customer is just A, B, C. So yeah, there's a few things. I know a few people do Zoom very, very well, and I've heard how they do it and it sounds good to me, but I would just do phones. That's my take on it.
100%, especially for people that are beginners, because I think that's one of the things that we encountered back in April of last year when all these people were doing virtual was some people like got it and they did it right away and they thought it was easy, and all these other people thought it was easy and they tried it, but then they just failed and failed and failed and failed. And one of the things I think of is when I used to work in a corporate gym, and I remember they had like this, basically it was the discovery call for a solar appointment, but it was with fitness and personal training, and they called it a health and fitness consultation. Every place I ever worked always had a different name for it. It was all the same thing. But the biggest thing was, when you're a beginner, they taught you to stick to the slideshow, like just go slide to slide, read it, kind of go through your presentation. And it helped beginners to like make sure that they didn't miss anything. But no one I knew that was actually successful at the company ever actually followed that format. It was more of like just a learning tool. And then they were able to kind of develop their own style. And I was just talking to another solar rep who I'm starting to train, and it was like, he was kind of had the same mindset. He's completely open to virtual, but he was overthinking the Zoom call. Like, okay, I got to do this. And then his presentation and going through the slides. And I have a secondary reason why I don't like it, the slides and the presentations, is because the second you open a slideshow, it feels like a sales pitch. And the second it feels like a sales pitch, they're not looking at what can this do for me? They're looking at what is wrong with this. And that's when they kind of really they put their guard up, and it's just much, much harder for you to kind of build that connection and rapport with them, because they're treating it like a sales pitch rather than just a phone call. And
exactly.
And that's one of the things. I think it is a great tool. And I actually think that having those graphs and that information is perfectly fine. But I think you have to make sure that you kind of question them and you dig and you find what it is that they're interested in or what it is that they're worried about. And then you can go and kind of pick out the graphs or the charts that might speak to them.
Yeah, 100%. That absolutely. If you just show the whole proposal, if a customer sees that a proposal is already made and they don't have it, what are they going to ask for? Hey, can you send me that via email? I'll take a look at it. Right. So it's, if you just go in slide to slide and it's like a full thing and you're not really engaging them. And like you said, getting off script a bit with proposals. That's why we don't really do standard proposals. I don't let my guys do Zoom. It's just too many worms. And phone based, we can still have a very high close rate, if not a better one than Zoom.
Yeah, I remember I tell people this all the time. Like the easiest sale I can ever remember in solar, I was talking to this guy and he was in Wisconsin. I swear we spoke for 35 minutes and I think I spoke 30 minutes about the Green Bay Packers. Like we were just talking about football. And after that, he was just like, oh, what are the numbers? He's like, great. He's like, what do we do for the next step? And I was like, okay. He's like, and that is, it's not always going to be like that necessarily, but the idea is that there's no way that this person you're speaking with, the conversation is always going to kind of take a different route. And you always have to kind of feel it out and figure out where it's going to take you rather than going to a slideshow that's going to walk you step by step by step by step. Because I know if I saw a slideshow like that, I would be thinking to myself, oh man, why did I hop on the Zoom? And I would be regretting it almost instantly. Even if it was telling me that I could save money, it just is awkward and just doesn't feel natural. It feels salesy and people don't want, good salesmen don't feel salesy, but the customer doesn't really want that. Tell me about your what you've kind of, because obviously you have a lot of knowledge when it comes to virtual sales, and you've done this all over the world with a whole bunch of different people, and but you've done a lot of training with them. What is the number one thing that you look to kind of help people improve, or like what do you think makes the biggest difference from a training perspective for someone who's trying to be better at virtual?
So I mean, it's really case by case, but if I had to pinpoint it, right now, I see two major things and everyone is seeing one. So first off, let's put systems and tech aside. Let's just talk straight sales. I'm super into tech. I'm super into processes and systems. But that is such a can of worms, and that's something also that nobody has figured out. But let's put that to the side. Let's say the tech is all set up, automations, everything's good. There's two primary things that are, lacking that I really break it down to is your disco call and your closing call. Everyone looks at their close rates. I have a 10% close rate, 15% close rate. They look at their closing calls and they say, why is everyone telling me I got to think about it. I got to look at the numbers, and they always look at their close. And yes, there's issues there, but I'm seeing a pattern right now, especially on virtual, where the biggest issue that people have is their appointment setting call, their discovery call. And when people send me scripts, I've been working a lot with a lot of people right now on their first call scripts. That's primarily the biggest gap that I see, because people think that their first call script is one paragraph. What's your credit score? What's your annual income? What's your name? What's your address? Okay, see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. And that's the paragraph. That's the first script. So I think that's the biggest problem. If that sort of answers your question, that I'm seeing right now, when people come to me for training, I go straight to their first call script, because it's so much more than that. You have to get in. You have to give them a reason to show. You have to, set their mind up that that closing call is to get there and make a decision on that call. Right. If you try to push on that call without them being ready for that, that's when, you're called a pushy salesperson. So there's a lot to be said about the gap that's in virtual with that first discovery call, that first appointment call. And then secondly, probably I would say the tech and systems. That's just, nobody has anything set up right now. It's crazy. People trying to scramble, everyone using, one CRM, won't name it, but those are the two things when someone comes to me for training. I think that having the right software can really take your business to a high level. And we're joking, but that's obviously the CRM that everyone in the solar space is using. But it is funny because I think, number one, both those things are 100% right. And what I have seen is, like, number one, we're talking about that intro call. Number one, all sales reps they try to outsource that call like as soon as possible. Like, I want a call center. I want to hire an appointment center. I don't want to make these phone calls. And unless you have like
6, 7, 8 appointments a day, then that's a mistake. Because what that call is really going to do is it's building rapport, but it's connecting with them so that they have a reason to actually show up to the next call. Because if they have a connection with you, if they feel like, you're not a friend necessarily, but you're actually someone that they've had some sort of connection with, they're much less likely to just bail on that call. And that's what you see with people that use a call center. The call center will call leads. They go through a list. They ask the questions like a robot. They get the information. They book an appointment, and then the appointments show up at like 20% or whatever the awful number is. And so the discovery call is, you have the information that you do want to get from them, but at the same time, it's kind of almost just like the first part of your actual call, meaning it should kind of all go together. The part of the first call is just to get the information that you need so that you can kind of get to work on the proposal and get the information that they want. But at the same time, you're still building rapport. You're still getting to know them. You're still trying to get them to like you, and you're still trying to just find out what makes them tick. So you're going to be able to solve their problem. The worst thing that I think almost anybody can do is do a discovery call and just say, okay, well, I just have some questions to ask you to see if you qualify. And then bop. Because then they have, number one, once again, it goes back to just being salesy, but at the same time, it's not even salesy. It's kind of rude in a way. It's just like, okay, we just want to get the information from you. Obviously we're trying to move forward. But you're not showing any interest or investment in them and what they actually care about. You're just showing that you want to see if they qualify so you can move them to the next step. And even if that is like the purpose of the call, you still want to use your energy to connect with the people so that not only will they be more likely to show up to the next call, but they'll be more likely to close because they've already kind of felt a connection and investment with you. But that's one of the biggest things. I actually was going to make a video about it. It's on my list, but then again, I have a billion videos on my list. And the second thing with software, man, it is kind of weird how everyone has just kind of ran to the same software. Like, I think the software is awesome and it's really cool, but every single person is different. Every business is different. Every team is different. And you really have to find what works for you. Some of the best teams that I've ever seen in solar sales are using Google Sheets.
That was us for quite a while, just straight Google Sheets. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's other ones too that I think I personally prefer better than go high level. But I think a lot of people also use software as a crutch. They pretend like because they don't have their CRM intact, they're not able to, that's why they're not closing as many deals. But then you look at their CRM or their personal cell phone and they're calling the lead 2 times in the first 2 weeks. And that's one of the bigger issues too.
Yeah.
But especially with virtual, because virtual, you're probably going to have a lot more reschedules. So
you have to have automated processes. Like it's such a gap. Nobody does this. Like what happens when you have a reschedule? What happens? Are you relying on yourself to get that back into your dialer to call them back? If you do, your opportunity's gone. And how many times are you calling them every single day? What time in between? Are you automating that process? Do you have a dialer that does that? No shows, cancellations, reschedules. How are you getting the utility bill? Are you manually doing it? Automations cure everything, but and you can do it individually. It's not that expensive, but individual solar reps are still on Google Sheets and a mobile phone. That seems to be the most common thing. Or, that one CRM that shall not be named and a mobile phone.
Yeah, so. And the other thing too is with the software. I think the biggest thing is the reps just need to have their process. I don't even know if I would go as far as say it has to be automated, but you have to know what's going to happen next. And you have to know, okay, I need to follow up with them and you have to record it somewhere so that you actually do it. It amazes me actually that the solar industry is kind of so, unorganized when it comes to, I've never talked to a company that had kind of like the structure that you see in a lot of different industries. And I was talking to some guy today who is, he's like, I'm interested in selling solar. He's like, I've ran successful businesses selling internet for these companies. He's like, these are my leads. This is how I do things. Like, these are my processes. And I'm like, if you bring that kind of like organization and work ethic to solar, you're going to crush it, because solar is it's an incredible industry. And I talk about it almost almost every single podcast, I think we all kind of take for granted a little bit how great of an industry it is where you can slack off and still make really good money.
You don't need processes right now. Like you can go in as total, no processes, almost no work ethic, and make a lot of money, but that's going to start falling off very, very quickly. And those that are left are just perfect streamlined processes, 100% efficiency and productivity. It's what you see with a lot of mature markets. Sort of the same in Australia right now as well.
So how long were you in Australia? When did you start in Australia?
Australia was my home base up until, it sort of still is, although they won't let me back in, but up until...
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh about you being locked out of your home. The way you said it was kind of funny.
Yeah. I mean, it's forced me to look at other markets, which I'm thankful for. So end of 2020. So 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, 6 years, better part of 6 years in the solar industry in Australia.
So where was the market at when you first got there? Because a lot of people, they talk about Australia as like a mature market. And occasionally in the Facebook groups for solar pros, you see the conversation come up, like what happens when the tax credit goes away? What happens when things become more competitive or the market gets more saturated? So like when you got to Australia 6 years ago, where was the Australian market compared to where our United States market is today?
So we did a mastermind on this a few weeks ago, and I pulled numbers for average installed kilowatts per year, right? And the graph from 2014, 2013, just not a sliver, but 2015 is a slight little bump up to 2020, 21 was an exponential, just 5 years, just straight up line from nothing to boom. I came at 2015. And it really started going off. Maybe it was a little bump. Then 2019, then just to the moon. So I would say I got there about a year or two before the actual boom. I see a lot of, to compare it to the US, I see a lot of similarities in the market in 2016, 2017. So right before the boom in the US right now. So I would say, I have said this before, we're 6 to 12 months before the actual just skyrocket up. And I think what's going to stoke that fire is a new subsidy that's being introduced. Whether that's going to be from that $3.5 trillion budget plan or something else, but something's going to spark it, or maybe nothing sparks it just exponentially grows. But I would say 6 to 12 months away from an absolute skyrocket.
Yeah. And I think one of the things too that we have found when we've been talking to reps and helping them with their sales pitch is one of the kind of paradigm shifts. Paradigm? I don't know what paradigm shifts. I can tell I haven't done these interviews enough. Is when you start to talk to homeowners and you try to help them realize that solar isn't something that is not only is it not going to go away, but eventually you're going to get solar. Like eventually your house is going to get solar, or you're going to be paying $600 a month to the utility company. And trying to get them to realize that, and that helps with the long-term value and the long-term savings that we're able to do in a proposal, because we're talking about making the utility company the bad guy, and you're going to make this switch. You might as well make it now before these incentives go away. And then using the marketing, fear of missing out, I don't want to miss the credits. Because the worst thing that homeowners could do is wait until their bills are $600 a month and all the subsidies are gone. And then they're going to be paying full price for solar, and their bills are going to be much higher than they would have been if they just took action 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago. And definitely the long-term value, I think, is one of the other things that solar reps need to kind of speak to a little bit more, because they're always so focused on short-term value and immediate savings. And then if that immediate savings is not there, I know reps that just like throw the deal away. Like, I don't care. It's not there. It's going to be a tough sale. And if you're able to focus on long-term, then hopefully every sale will be a little bit easier, but we are getting to that point. And so therefore, if you kind of adapt and kind of shift your view of it and able to communicate that to the homeowner, you're going to have success for a lot longer than some of these other people are that only rely on immediate savings.
Yeah. And that's how we sell in Australia. Like we were gobsmacked when we came to the US and discovered how people sold here. In Australia, there's no immediate savings. Like there's never been immediate savings. First off, we only have 5-year, maybe 7-year finance terms. And then secondly, I mean, that's the primary reason, right? So the monthly or the fortnightly in Australia, it's a fortnightly payment every 2 weeks. It's never lower than what their current fortnightly payment is. So in Australia, we grew up saying, cool, your rates are going to be going up. This is what it's going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And you can see, that classic solar graph where it plateaus and the energy rates just keep going up. That was the pitch, right? You are going to be saving. You're going to be securing your future here. When your rates keep going up, but you're solar, and that's how we sold. When we get to the US and we can save people $50, $100 a month from day one, it's like game on, let's go. But we still sell the way we do in Australia because it still just makes so much sense for people. And we layer on, oh, by the way, you're also saving an extra $50 a month, right? But yeah, I see a lot of people relying on the immediate savings to save. And what that's going to do is they're going to have to keep doing that if they don't, add value and long-term value. And it could shoot them in the foot. It may not, because the US market is just so good. Bills are only going to go up. Solar's only going to go down. And people's understanding of solar and how it can save the money is only going to rise. So we'll see. But we're going to continue selling long-term for sure, because it helps. And it's harder, meaning, we can get the customers that other people won't.
Yeah. And with that too, I mean, just think about it for all the sales reps out there that maybe think they need to focus more on the long term. I mean, think about it. If you focus on the long term and you sell them like they're ready to go, then you tell them they're going to save money like instantly. It's going to be a slam dunk. And it's kind of similar to when you give like people that use referral bonuses or just any type of bonuses to get someone to do something. If you put it out there too early, it kind of diminishes the actual impact of it, where you want to kind of keep the best. You want to keep things close to your chest that are going to have the biggest impact, because then after you built that value, they're closer, and then you're able to kind of hit them over the head with it. So it will be a slam dunk for sure. I'm curious from you, because you have a worldly perspective. I would assume, I don't want to assume anything, but how do Americans compare to Australians as far as the homeowners that you're working with and how the discussions go?
Great question. So I've noticed this, as well as a lot of my Australian guys have come on. Australians, let's take a look at like that first call, that first knock, that first cold call or first discussion. Australians are a hell of a lot more straightforward. North Americans, in my opinion, we're not straightforward at all. We're very beat around the bush. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Australians will tell you straight up if they like you or not, right? Tell you to screw off if they don't like you. So that translates to customers as well. If you call someone, whether it's cold or inbound or cold knock, they're either going to shut the door, shut the phone on you, or they're in, right? So when you're cold calling, 90%, 95% of your calls are an immediate hang up. In the States, however, what we found was Americans stayed on the phone. They might even be saying, no, sorry, we're just not interested. Yeah, we're just not interested. But they stayed on the phone, something we weren't used to. So we obviously were like, okay, well, this is an opportunity. And it worked really well for us. So like, for example, cold calling right now in the States is the easiest cold calling I've ever done in my life. And same with the team. Like, they're just like, they just don't get off the phone. So they have all these opportunities to try to get the customer back and try to say something, because nobody puts down the phone because it's rude or something. But yeah, customers engage, maybe not engage, but they'll give you more time a day. I think maybe it's because it's a cultural thing, a societal thing, that they don't want to be rude. But then in the closing part of that, we find a lot more people, Australians versus Americans. Australians, if they don't want it, they'll tell you at the close, like, no, look, we got to think about it. And you go for the close, and eventually they're just like, nah, just leave it. But Americans, they will rather jump off a cliff than tell you they don't want it. They would much prefer to say, this is amazing. This all looks fantastic. Oh, we're definitely going to go ahead. We just need to, take a look at our finances tonight, and we're going to call you the first thing tomorrow and get signatures done. So I found a lot of my guys were getting tripped up with that because they'd never experienced that before. They're used to, the Australians saying, not, and they handle the objection, as opposed to someone promising that they're going to go forward with it and then just ghosting them. So that's a big issue that we found that we had to solve. But I don't know what it is, but nobody likes being mean here. I guess.
It's almost like trying to identify what it is about that, and then maybe identifying it at an early stage so that you just are able to handle it differently before the close. Yeah, because that makes sense to me. I mean, when you were talking, I was like having an idea. I was like, we should take some like 5 like beginner sales reps and drop them off in Australia and see if they can get a month lesson of hard knocks. And then when they come back, they would be like that would be an insane training program. Obviously, they probably wouldn't be able to get in right now, but it's just funny because when you think about it, if you're able to be successful in a market like that in Australia, then coming to the US market, it's different. And it's not going to be necessarily easy, but it should be an exciting opportunity. And I think that's obviously what you and your team saw when you guys came here. Have you had any, because you not so much, but you do have guys that you work with that are Australian, like Australian from down under, mate. And have they had, what has their experience been like with Americans other than that kind of maybe just the homeowners being afraid to be rude? Have they had any troubles being like having that foreign voice when speaking with Americans? If anything, I think it might be a positive for them.
Positive, absolutely. Same thing that I found, and probably why I did so well at sales in Australia is because everyone loves a foreign voice, right? So they immediately, they can use it as a rapport tool, and the Americans bloody love it. The only issue they have is if they're speaking to someone that has, a strong Southern accent, they got to get used to that, right? It's just like I was when I moved to Australia. I couldn't understand anybody. Now I can understand Australians better than North Americans. But the accent, it works very, very well. There's certain accents, right, that are a bit, stereotypical when combined with sales. Fortunately, Australian is not that accent. They found that it's very beneficial. And I have a lot of British reps as well. And same thing, they can use it immediately as a rapport tool. Something that they're not just just another American, right? Just like I wasn't just another Australian when I went to Australia, so I had talking points.
Well, something about it gives you like like an image of upper class, like you always see the stereotypical like English speaking person is always like the butler or their class or whatever. But no, I'm saying Americans have that as well, where we hear a British accent and for some reason it just with the British accent, it sounds educated, it sounds sophisticated, it sounds like all of this. And I would assume that on the phone, homeowners kind of respond to that differently than they might definitely with compared to like, for example, the Philippines, people that hire Philippine call centers just because they're the cheapest, and then the person picks up on that. If they're like, oh, this is someone from the Philippines, their reaction to the conversation is going to be different than, oh, this is a person from Australia. And that's just something that I was interested in because very few people actually that I know I could even ask that to. So cool, man. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you have an awesome mastermind that kind of goes over virtual sales and providing value for sales reps. Can you tell us a little bit about that and let us know when sales reps or solar reps would be able to take advantage of that and find that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So VSC holds a free public mastermind every Wednesday around 8 p.m. EST, 5 p.m. PST. We go over broad topics. So it's really the entry point for people that just want to get some more information. I always say, take a look at it. If you get some value, then you can dive into VSC and sort of the paid courses and stuff that we have. But first, get some free value every Wednesday. Join the Virtual Solar Club Facebook group. Chuck in the comments, what type of topics you want. Last week, we went over cold calling. Yesterday, we went over inspiration and motivation, which I thought was a really important theme to go over. But yeah, it's just a place to come every week, network, community, get some free value. And grow and learn together in this wonderful world of virtual solar sales.
Yes, learn. Too many salespeople don't spend time learning, and then obviously practicing what you learn is different. I was just thinking, I was like, we should do like some sort of virtual sales contest with Americans trying to sell in Australia over the phone, and that would.
I don't think it would be fair. The US is too easy.
No, I don't think you guys can. No, I'm saying you Australians can't participate. Like doing it for the Americans to try to increase their skills and be able to sell in Australia just as a
I'd love to see that. I'll provide the leads.
It'd be super interesting. And then also like obviously if anyone actually like wanted to like record the calls and see how it went, I could see it being an incredible learning experience for not only the people watching, but the people that are doing it as well. I mean, I think that's kind of what I'm getting from you about the Australian market is, it's where America is going. And for in my opinion, based on what we're discussing, what we're seeing is if you're not going to increase your skills and get to a point where you're able to sell those types of people, then you're going to struggle to stay in solar for more than the next 2, 3, 4 years. But always, man, it was great talking to you. I apologize again that the first time we had technical difficulties, but I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And for sure, everyone check it out on Wednesdays. You said Wednesdays?
Yep. Wednesdays, 8 p.m. PST. I post it all over the group. So virtualsolar.club as well if you want to sign up. Totally free to sign up.
Cool. Well, I'll go ahead and do that right now. And I hope everyone listening does as well. Thank you, man. I hope you have an awesome day.
Have a good one, man. Take it easy.
Take care.